The Judge's Heart. When Love Taught the Law a Lesson. About justice. Judge Margaret Chen was 62 years old and had never been in love. 35 years on the bench, thousands of cases, countless verdicts. She dedicated her entire life to the law. No husband, no children, no romance, just justice. Everyone feared her. Lawyers, criminals, even other judges. She was known as the Iron Lady. Fair, but ruthless. What she didn't know: one snowy night in Chicago, a young taxi driver would change everything. His name was Alexei Volkov, 34 years old. Immigrant. Illegal. And running from a crime he didn't commit. He helped her to her door, held her hand on the ice, smiled kindly. And 6 months later, when he confessed the truth in her bedroom, she had a choice: turn him in or save him. For this is the story of a woman who spent her life enforcing the law, and the man who taught her that justice isn't always black and white. Sometimes love is the truest form of justice. December 18th, 2023, Chicago, Illinois. It was 11 p.m., snowing heavily, temperature dropping fast. Judge Margaret Chen left the courthouse late. Another long day, another stack of cases. She called a taxi. The car that pulled up was old but clean. The driver stepped out. Young, maybe mid-30s, handsome in a humble way, polite smile. "Evening, ma'am. Where to?" Margaret gave him her address. Lincoln Park, 20-minute drive. The young man drove carefully. No small talk, respectful silence. When they arrived, Margaret paid, tipped generously. She stepped out of the car. The sidewalk was icy, treacherous. She took one step and nearly slipped. The driver was there instantly, out of the car, hand extended. "Careful, ma'am. Let me help you." His accent was thick, Eastern European, Russian maybe. He held her arm gently, walked her to her front door, made sure she was steady. "Thank you," Margaret said, surprised by his kindness. "Of course. Be safe." He smiled and walked back to his car. Margaret watched him drive away. She didn't know his name, didn't think she'd see him again. But something about that moment stayed with her. January 2024. Margaret was shopping at Whole Foods. Saturday afternoon, rare day off. She was in the produce section when she heard a voice. "Excuse me, ma'am." She turned. It was him. The taxi driver. He was holding a bag of apples, looking just as surprised as she was. "Oh, you're the judge lady. From December. The icy night." Margaret smiled. "Yes. And you're the kind taxi driver." They both laughed. "I'm Alexei," he said, extending his hand. "Margaret." They talked, casually, about nothing important. The weather, the store, Chicago winters. But there was something easy about it. Comfortable. "Do you shop here often?" Margaret asked. "Every Saturday. I live nearby." "Me too." A pause. Then Alexei smiled. "Maybe we'll run into each other again." "Maybe." They did. The next Saturday. And the one after that. It became routine. Saturday groceries. Brief conversations. Smiles. Then coffee. Then lunch. Margaret couldn't explain it. She'd never been interested in dating. Never had time. Never felt the pull. But with Alexei, it was different. He was kind. Genuine. No games. No expectations. And he listened. Really listened. February 2024. Alexei and Margaret started spending more time together. Dinners, walks along Lake Michigan, quiet evenings at her place. Margaret's colleagues would have been shocked. The Iron Lady dating a taxi driver 28 years younger? But Margaret didn't care. For the first time in her life, she felt alive. Alexei was different from anyone she'd ever known. He didn't care about her title, didn't fear her, didn't try to impress her. He just saw her as a person, And Margaret saw him too. He was intelligent, self-taught, read constantly, philosophy, history, law. Why law? Margaret asked one evening. Alexei hesitated. I believe in justice, real justice, not just rules. Margaret studied him. There's a story there. Maybe one day I'll tell you. March, April, May. Their relationship deepened. Alexei stayed over sometimes. They talked for hours. About life, about choices, about regrets. Margaret opened up in ways she never had. I've been alone my whole life, she confessed one night. I chose the law over everything. And now I'm 62, and I've never felt what I feel with you. Alexei held her hand. You're not alone anymore. But Margaret could sense something, a weight Alexei carried, a shadow. What are you running from? She asked softly. Alexei looked away. Nothing. Alexei, I'm just trying to build a better life. That's all. Margaret didn't push, but she knew there was more. June 2024, 6 months into their relationship, late one night, they were lying in bed, the city lights glowing through the window. Margaret turned to him. Tell me about your life. Your real life, not the taxi driver part. Before America. Alexei was quiet for a long time. Then he started talking. I'm from a small city in Russia. I was a translator. English, Russian, German. Worked for a logistics company. Sounds respectable. It was, until I saw something I shouldn't have. Margaret listened. My boss was moving shipments. I thought it was machinery, electronics. But one day, I found documents, drugs, heroin, massive quantities. They were using the company as a front. What did you do? I went to the police. I thought they'd help. I was naive. Alexei's voice cracked. 2 days later, the police arrested me. My boss had connections. Judges, cops, everyone. They planted drugs in my apartment, framed me, said I was the dealer. Margaret's heart sank. I knew I'd never get a fair trial, so I ran, sold everything I had, paid a smuggler, came to America. When? 2 years ago. I've been here illegally ever since, working, hiding, saving money for a lawyer back home. Tears streamed down his face. I'm not a criminal, Margaret. I swear to you, I just wanted to do the right thing. Margaret believed him. She'd seen enough liars in her courtroom to know truth when she heard it. Are you still wanted? Yes. Interpol has a warrant. Drug trafficking. If they find me, they'll extradite me. I'll spend 20 years in a Russian prison for a crime I didn't commit. Margaret was silent. Alexei looked at her. I understand if you want me to leave. You're a judge. I'm a fugitive. This isn't… Margaret put her hand on his face. Stop. Margaret, do you trust me? Yes. Then listen. If you're innocent, we can prove it. But you can't run forever. I don't have money for… I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about strategy. I've been a judge for 35 years. I know how the system works. I know how to build a defense. Alexei stared at her. You'd help me? Yes. Why? Because you're innocent. And because… She hesitated. Because I love you. It was the first time she'd said it. Alexei broke down. I love you too. July through October, 2024. Margaret became Alexei's secret lawyer. She couldn't represent him officially. Conflict of interest. But she could teach him. Every night they worked. Margaret pulled case files, international law, extradition treaties, Russian legal codes. She taught Alexei everything. In court, you never show emotion. You present facts, evidence, witnesses. But I don't have evidence. Then we build it. Margaret contacted a private investigator in Russia, paid him $10,000 of her own money. He dug into Alexei's old boss, found financial records, offshore accounts, ties to organized crime. Margaret compiled a dossier, 50 pages, airtight. This is your defense. Your boss framed you because you threatened his operation. You have proof he's corrupt. That makes your story credible. Alexei was amazed. How do you know all this? I've been sending criminals to prison for 35 years. I know how they think. Margaret also coached him on testimony. Never volunteer information. Answer only what's asked. Stay calm. Don't get defensive. They practiced for hours, mock trials in her living room. Margaret played prosecutor. Brutal. Aggressive. Alexei learned to stay composed. By October, he was ready. Margaret looked at him. You can do this, but you have to go back. Alexei nodded. I know. If you run forever, you'll never be free. You'll always be looking over your shoulder. What if I lose? You won't. Trust me. Alexei held her. What if I never see you again? Margaret's voice broke. Then I'll have loved you for 6 months, and that's more than I've had in 62 years. November 2024. Alexei flew back to Russia. He turned himself in at the airport, immediately arrested. His trial was set for 3 weeks later. Margaret couldn't be there, but she called him every day, guided him. Remember, calm, factual, confident. I'm scared. I know, but you're not alone. The trial began. The prosecution presented their case. Drugs found in his apartment. Testimony from his former boss. Alexei's public defender was weak, inexperienced, but Alexei didn't need him. When it was his turn to testify, Alexei stood. He presented Margaret's dossier, financial records, got a proof of his boss's criminal ties. He explained calmly, clearly, exactly as Margaret taught him. I reported a crime. I was punished for it. The drugs were planted. My boss has connections. This is retaliation. The judge reviewed the evidence. The prosecutor tried to discredit him, but Alexei didn't crack. Is it not convenient that you have all this evidence now? It's not convenient. It's the truth. And truth doesn't change because it's inconvenient. The courtroom was silent. After 3 days of testimony, the judge deliberated, and then delivered the verdict. Not guilty. Case dismissed. Mr. Volkov, you are free to go. Alexei collapsed in relief. He called Margaret immediately. I'm free, Margaret cried. I knew you would be. March 2025. Alexei returned to the United States. Legally this time. Student visa. He'd been accepted to Northwestern Law School. Margaret had written his recommendation. He arrived in Chicago on a cold spring morning. Margaret was waiting at the airport. When she saw him, she ran. They held each other. No words needed. I'm here, Alexei whispered. I'm really here. You're home. Alexei enrolled in law school, studied hard. Margaret mentored him, not as a lover, as a partner. They moved in together, quietly, privately, her colleagues whispered. The Iron Lady, living with a man 28 years younger? Margaret didn't care. For the first time in her life, she was happy. Alexei graduated 3 years later, passed the bar. He became a defense attorney, fighting for the innocent, just like Margaret taught him. And every night they came home to each other. 2 people who'd been alone their whole lives. Finally found. Margaret Chen spent 35 years believing the law was everything, black and white, right and wrong. But Alexei Volkov taught her something the law never could. Justice without compassion is just cruelty. And sometimes, the greatest act of justice is giving someone a second chance. If you were in Margaret's position, would you risk everything to save someone you loved? Smash that like button if this story moved you. Subscribe for more true stories of love, redemption, and justice. New videos every week. Comment. Do you believe Margaret made the right choice? Thanks for watching. Remember, fairness isn't always found in courtrooms. Sometimes it's found in the courage to believe in someone when no one else will. See you in the next story.